Thursday, November 6th, 2008. He didn't say, "See you later." Nobody who was let out of the slammer ever said, "See you later." Often, very often over the past 10 years, he had imagined the day of his release. Now it occurred to him that he'd only thought as far as the moment he would walk out the door into freedom, which all of a sudden seemed threatening. He had no plans for his life. Not anymore. Even without the droning admonishments of the social workers, he had realized long ago that the world was not waiting for him, and that he would have to deal with all sorts of obstacles and defeats in a future that no longer seemed so rosy. He could forget about a career as a doctor, which had once been his ambition after he passed his A-level exams for the university. Under the circumstances, the training he'd received to be a locksmith, which he'd completed in prison, might come in handy. In any case, it was high time he looked life straight in the eye. As the gray, spike-topped iron gate of the Rockenberg Correctional Facility closed behind him with a clang, he saw her standing there across the street. In the past 10 years, she was the only one who had written to him regularly. But he was still surprised to see her. Actually, he had expected his father to come. She was leaning on the fender of a silver SUV, holding a cell phone to her ear and puffing nervously on a cigarette. He stopped. When she recognized him, she straightened up, stuck the phone in her coat pocket, and flicked away the cigarette butt. He hesitated for a moment before crossing the cobblestone street, carrying the small suitcase with his possessions in his left hand. He stopped in front of her. "Hello, Toby," she said with a nervous laugh. 10 years was a long time. They hadn't seen each other in all that time, because he hadn't wanted her to visit him. "Hello, Nadia," he replied. It was strange to call each other by these unfamiliar names. In person, she looked better than on TV, younger. They stood facing each other, hesitant. A brisk gust of wind sent the dry fall leaves rustling across the pavement. The sun had slipped behind thick gray clouds. It was cold. "Fantastic that you're out." She threw her arms around him and kissed his cheek. "I'm glad, really." "I'm glad, too." The instant he uttered this cliché, he asked himself whether it was true. Happiness was not the same thing as this feeling of strangeness, of uncertainty. She let him go because he made no move to return her embrace. In the old days, she had been his best friend, the neighbor's daughter, and he had taken her presence in his life for granted. Nadia was the sister he'd never had. But now everything was different. And not only her name. The tomboy Natalie, who had been ashamed of her freckles, the gap in her front teeth, and her breasts, had been transformed into Nadia von Bredow, a famous actress who was in great demand. She had realized her ambitious dream to leave behind the village where they'd both grown up, to climb all the way to the top of the social ladder. He, on the other hand, could no longer put his foot even on the lowest rung.